Hey guys, so I mentioned in my last video that I have celiac disease. So this video is going to be somewhat of like an informational video about it because I know a lot of people are unaware about what celiac is. I printed off paper facts or whatever so I can make sure that I get everything correct about it. Can you stop, please? Excuse you. No nose. Can you go do that on the slide? Go do it the slide. This child, I swear. So anyways, everything's actually going pretty good right now. I'm looking at possibly getting a job to help our financial status because it is expensive as all get out to live in California. So anyways, basically this is the definition of celiac disease that you'll find on the National Celiac Foundation website, which basically says celiac disease is a serious autoimmune disease. It occurs in genetically predisposed people where the ingestion of gluten leads to damage in the small intestine. It's estimated to affect 1 in 100 people worldwide. 2 in 1/2 million Americans are undiagnosed and at risk for long-term health conditions. So, essentially, careful. So essentially, okay, pick it out. Get it out. Drop your thing and get it out. So, the damage that occurs is when gluten is ingested, which gluten is wheat, barley, rye, and malt is what it's found in. Gluten is actually a protein. My goodness. Come here. Let me see. Did you get it? Okay. And what it actually does is your body views it as a foreign body that needs to be like your body basically views it as a foreign substance in your body, so it attacks it. And by doing that, what it ends up doing is it ends up damaging the villi in your small intestine, which are little finger-like thingies. Think like of an anemone from Finding Nemo, something kind of like that. And they're there to help absorb nutrients. So when those are damaged, you don't absorb nutrients as well as you should be. So you actually end up being pretty malabsorption or something. I can't pronounce the word. It's hereditary, meaning it runs in families. So basically any like first degree relatives of somebody that has celiac disease have a 1 in chance risk of developing it. My kids have the celiac gene now because I have it. And so I'm supposed to actually get them after Rory turns 2. He's supposed to be tested every 3 to 5 years, as well as Riley, to make sure that they don't develop it, because there's a such thing as asymptomatic celiac where you don't show any symptoms. It can pop up essentially at any time, honestly. From the research that I've done, a lot of it shows that it can pop up after something that tends to lower your immune system, like a big stressful event, life-changing event, pregnancy, stress, anything like that. So because celiac is an autoimmune disorder, it's easy to get other autoimmune disorders from it. The earlier that you're diagnosed in your life, the less chance that you have for developing another autoimmune condition. I was diagnosed as a month before my 19th birthday, so I actually have about a 27% chance of developing another autoimmune disorder. Pick it out. You're okay. Pick it out. Which is coincidental because I actually do have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where my thyroid kind of jumps back and forth, and I've had that as long as I can remember. I don't remember when I was diagnosed, but I guess that and celiac kind of also tie together. And actually part of a treatment for Hashimoto's and keeping your thyroid normal is going gluten-free. So that's kind of cool too, because that ties together. If you are undiagnosed, the celiac disease can lead to iron deficiency, early onset osteoporosis, infertility and miscarriage, lactose intolerance, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, central and peripheral nervous system disorders, pancreatic insufficiency, and intestinal lymphomas and other GI cancers. Some of the long-term health effects of it, some of the long-term health effects are you have 2 times of a greater risk of developing coronary artery disease and 4 times greater risk of developing small bowel cancers. Untreated can also lead to type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, dermatitis herpetiformis, I don't know how to pronounce it, which is basically an itchy skin rash that can pop up from gluten exposure. Infertility, miscarriage, epilepsy, migraines, short stature, heart disease, and intestinal cancers, which is super cool. So it's basically, in general, if you go untreated or you do get diagnosed and you don't go gluten-free, those are some of the just a few of the complications that can happen if you do not go gluten-free to treat it. Some of the symptoms of celiac disease, I can talk about this without my papers. For me, as long as I could remember, I had stomach problems. I was either TMI here, so if you don't want TMI, go ahead and fast forward. I was either constipated, or I had diarrhea, or my stomach hurt. No matter what I did, no matter what I ate, it just always hurt. And I had my doctor when I was 18. I asked her if there was a test that we could run to figure out why. And I'd mentioned I read up about things like gluten intolerances and celiac. And so I asked her if she could run that panel to see. And so she ran the panel and also referred me out to a gastroenterologist, which is a doctor specializing in stomach, basically a stomach specialist. I had my appointment with the GI. He was a very incompetent doctor, I guess 2 weeks away from retirement. He basically told me my panel came back positive for celiac disease and to go gluten-free and look it up online to figure out what it is. So I actually did not see another GI doctor besides that until probably about a month ago. So some of the symptoms too, if you get cross-contaminated, which is basically even as small as a tiny crumb, I think it's 640th of a piece of bread can make you sick. Or even if you don't get sick and you get cross-contaminated, you still cause damage to your intestines, which they're still on the fence about whether or not with the gluten-free diet your intestines can heal the villi in it, or if they don't and the damage is permanent. So when I get cross-contaminated, if it's a small amount, I'm really bloated. My stomach looks like I'm 7-8 months pregnant. It's really uncomfortable. My acid reflux acts up. I get the runs, or I get super constipated. I get really bad stomach pains that feel like somebody's dragging a piece of jagged glass in my stomach. And accompanied by that is other symptoms that aren't even basically stomach related. It's more of, I get what I like to call brain fog. And it's where basically my mind kind of starts blanking out on things, and I just feel like I'm just in a fog. I get really depressed because I'm in pain. It can make you extremely tired because your body's fighting something that it's not supposed to be fighting. I also, so with it, you have to have your own separate toaster. You have to, in my case with the kids, I have to wash my hands extremely well after feeding them because I've gotten sick very many times from making them lunch and then forgetting and putting my hands up to my mouth, or putting them in, making myself food with my hands afterwards. So you have to be really careful about washing hands. If the kids eat something or my husband eats something, because I'm the only one fully gluten-free, if they eat something, they have to wash their mouths before I can give them kisses, which has gotten me sick as well. There's even cross-contamination can be pretty bad. Like, it's just even the smallest things. If somebody cooks with regular flour in the kitchen, I can't be in there for 12 to 24 hours because it stays airborne for 12 to 24 hours. And if I breathe it in, I'm technically ingesting it, and I can get sick from that too. So it's pretty crazy. Labeling. So labeling gluten-free products has gotten a lot better over the years. It's still difficult. It's a voluntary term that manufacturers can put on their products. It has to qualify below 20 parts per million in order to be labeled gluten-free. Now that's where some funky things come in. there's different labelings. I'll provide little stickers below to kind of show. There's 4 different types of labelings that are the best to be trusted. And then there's just somebody just putting gluten-free, which is very difficult because there's things like, thank you. There's the gluten-free Cheerios, which are actually not celiac safe. They're not celiac safe because the way that they do their process is oats are very much in contact with wheat a lot. They're grown together. So oats generally tend to create a lot of cross-contamination issues, and Cheerios are made with oats. Basically, the way that they do it, I actually wrote it down here. Basically, the way that they test in order to be able to put the gluten-free label is 12 to 18 boxes of cereal are pulled during a production cycle. The contents of each individual box are ground. A subsample of ground product is taken from each box. The subsamples are combined, basically. And then the combined subsamples are subject to additional grinding. And then a minimum of 6 1-gram sample extractions are taken from this combined and tested to come to that below 20 parts per million to label it gluten-free. Now, the problem with that is when the oats are separating between the barley and the oats, the machines don't always separate them 100% completely. So then there becomes the risk of cross-contamination with the barley. Due to the fact that they don't test every box or, all of the Cheerios in the box, that's where the problem comes in, is because it's a gamble. You could receive 3 boxes of Cheerios that you don't have any reaction to and that aren't cross-contaminated. But then that, winner jackpot, you get one that is contaminated and you get sick. And even when you get sick, obviously it causes intestinal damage and sets back the healing of your intestines. So there's plenty other ways to label them and such. And there's ones that are safe and ones that aren't. It's a really tough condition to have because gluten-free has become a fad diet for people that want to lose weight. So everybody is kind of lax on it. And that's not fair to us with celiac because then we don't get taken seriously. We can't just have just a small taste. We can't just, get a sandwich and remove the bread. Trust me, happened to me once in a restaurant and I was sick for 2 weeks. And so it's really tedious, and it takes it kind of takes over your life in a sense because you have to be really careful about what you eat, what you put on your skin, all that stuff to avoid getting sick. And it's, it's crazy. I never had an endoscopy, which is part of the diagnosing process. So actually I am scheduled for one on December 2nd, which I'll let you guys know how that goes. He's basically going to go in and assess the damage that I have in my intestines. And then he's going to also take a biopsy to test for any precancerous cells because celiac can cause intestinal cancer. So it's, it's really difficult, and it gets lonely because you can't just go eat out wherever. You can't just grab a quick snack from the gas station. You can't just, you have to check ingredients often. There were things that I thought I could have, like Slim Jims, because I thought they were gluten-free, which I guess previously they were, but then they added barley malt into it, and they don't have to put contains barley malt because barley malt is not one of the top 8 allergens, so all they have to label is if it contains wheat, which barley malt is not wheat, but barley has gluten because gluten is a protein. So it's really, you really got to double check everything, and it's hard to know what to trust and what not. And so it's always better to veer on the side of caution and just not. They are coming out with more and more gluten-free foods, which is really nice for us. But the problem too is that because they have more, they have to do the testing, they have to use different flours. It's expensive. So basically a regular sized loaf of gluten-free bread from Udi's is about $7, which is of course very much so more expensive than regular bread. So it's definitely a life-changing thing, and it definitely sucks, and it gets really lonely and really tough when, people have potlucks and you can't eat anything and you have to explain, look, I can't, or like at church when they do communion, And they're like, oh, why aren't you taking communion? Like, I can't because you guys gave a cracker with it, and I don't want to, end up in the hospital. So get it off, baby. Move the car. So it's a very difficult condition to have. But I'm glad, looking back, that I was diagnosed. I've been gluten-free for, it'll be 6 years in February. And, I'm learning things on a daily basis, learning what I can and can't have, even in medications. And so it's still a learning process, even almost 6 years in. And it's still a sad process. It's still depressing. I really beat myself up over it sometimes, but it's not, I'm glad that I was diagnosed, because then, in a sense, I'm also avoiding all of the long-term effects. If I wasn't gluten-free, I probably would not have been able to conceive my babies that I love so much. So it's hard, and it's a team effort in my family, which is, even more difficult when things get cross-contaminated and I can't eat them. But anyways, so that's kind of the basics of celiac disease and my continuous forever learning journey with it. If you want to know more or have any questions or comments, drop a comment below and I'll reply to you when I can. I'm going to provide a couple links below. And so yeah, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it so you'll get notified when I post a video. And yeah, leave a comment, like it, and thank you for watching.